public comment. I'm going to read to you. This is from Bronwyn Corchi, who is a teacher at the high school. I am the vocal music teacher at MDIHS. I belong to several professional organizations statewide and nationally, and have been a participant in discussions where colleagues are relating how their schools and districts are responding to these surreal times. I have had the opportunity to contrast the way we are proceeding with what is going on for many of my other colleagues. I am grateful that what I am experiencing compares very favorably to the reports of so many of my fellow educators in other districts. Thank you so much to our school administration team, the district administration team, and the school board that has supported all their efforts. I appreciate the clear and decisive communication, including the occasions when the answer to questions is, I don't know yet. Our leadership teams have looked with caring eyes at the diversity of our community with the clear goal of prioritizing the well-being of all of our students, families, and staff. Because of this overarching vision, together we are building practices that work to balance educational outcomes with seeking continuity in our sense of community and connectedness. Thank you to our whole thank you to our whole community for standing together beside us as we figure this out. I am so happy and proud to be a part of this educational community. Thank you all, board members, administrators, colleagues, students, families, and neighbors. Signed, Bronwyn Corchi, Director of Vocal Music, MDI High School Music Program. So that's always nice to hear. So thank you to all of you that are making all of this happen. So we're now going to go to reports and updates. And so Matt, you're up.
Sorry, I've got two screens going here, and I was getting the other one already and realized I hadn't unmuted yet. I was able to catch it before I started talking, though, which is a skill that we start to learn. So on you've got the principal's report again, like last month. I'm probably not going to be able to go through it as thoroughly as I often do, but just take a look at some of the things that are in there. One of the things that I think the board received the press release on is Kate Meyer has been chosen. Our English and Design Thinking and Island Pathways teacher has been chosen as the Hancock County Teacher of the Year. The Teacher of the Year program was revamped, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago to have several layers, including County Teachers of the Year. So now there are 16 of those, and they'll go on to the next step in the process. But they use the expertise, they being Educate Maine, uses the expertise of those County Teachers of the Year as a think tank. And so Kate has begun her work already as the Teacher of the Year for Hancock County. So we're really proud of her. We have a lot of great teachers, and Kate happened to stand out and win this. I think she's our first County Teacher of the Year since they went to this format. We've had a few finalists for Teachers of the Year since I've been here. I think Charlie Johnson and Christian Collins both got to the final round 10 or so years ago before they changed the format. And now Kate has a chance to represent us and move on. So we're proud of Kate. And a couple other things on staff that I wanted to pass along. First, we do have a teacher, Hannah Woodruff, who's moving on to a new location. And so we do have a math teacher as for nomination later in tonight's meeting that we're excited about to bring on board. And on a different note, I am sad to share that we lost a staff member, Roy Reed, over not this past weekend, but the weekend before. Roy was one of our custodians, and so he passed away a week ago Saturday. So we have some plans in mind to help honor Roy, but we will definitely miss him. He was always happy, always kind. He knew the students by name, he knew the teachers by name, and we're really going to miss Roy. So that's a sad part of our story this year. A couple other things I wanted to touch on as far as I sent a message out to the board with the information about the travel plans for our 3 trips that have been approved. The one trip to Europe, and then the Iceland and Guatemala trips. The Europe trip has been postponed several times. The Iceland, they are hoping to be able to find a travel date sometime in the next 18 months or so. For now, the Iceland and Guatemala trips are indefinitely suspended. Some of the reasoning behind that, first of all, the Europe trip is all paid for already. So that's why we kind of left that with some hope that the conditions will be such that they can travel. Where Iceland and Guatemala hadn't even turned in their deposits yet. Some families had put some money in, but they'd only paid it to us, where we were collecting it to send in a school-wide deposit. So nobody's out any money. And we didn't think it was appropriate to either be having students, a lot of times students pay for these trips by getting summer jobs. We all know those are going to be hard to come by for teenagers this year and next, possibly. And also, we didn't think that it was particularly appropriate to be fundraising for international travel at a time like this, when there's fundraising that can be done, and yet that fundraising is probably for more basic needs than international travel. So we didn't think it was appropriate to continue. So we're hopeful that those trips will all have a chance at some point, particularly the Europe trip, which was, as I think people will remember, to Ireland and Scotland and England, supposed to go this past April. They're working with EF. They have vouchers there. As soon as it's safe, they should be able to travel. And we'll keep working with that. But I didn't know if anybody had any questions on that before I moved on.
Marie?
Is there any consideration for future planning in thinking about, or how will you change your future planning in considering trips? You know, in terms of some companies that may be a little more flexible with returning deposits or I know there's a lot of different companies that you could choose from for instance, a Europe trip, because that's such a popular place that people go, versus like Guatemala. It's a different kind of trip versus Iceland. So.
Yes. So one thing I want to be clear about is that the Iceland group and the Guatemala group were very good about refunding money because we never gave them any. We hadn't even hit the date yet where we needed to make a deposit. I think EF has taken a bit of a beating over their refund policy. What EF offered was full voucher which was good for 2 years, and also transferable, so a voucher for a future trip with EF, either this trip continuing on later, or EF offers trips for college age students and adults also, or they offered a refund minus $1,000. And I think they've taken quite a bit of feedback on that, and I think that is a frustrating piece. One of the things about EF is that their refund policy is usually way less generous than that, and I think they gave the best offer they could without anticipating that they would go under as a company and wind up giving no money back to anyone. So that's a long way to answer. Yes, we are definitely going to be very choosy with trips. We'll continue to ask questions about how refund policies work, I'm sure companies are going to start developing pandemic plans as we go forward. And so we certainly will ask those hard questions, and we'll make the best choices for our travelers. And that may include EF, it may not. We just don't know how that's going to play out in the future. We also don't know when that's going to play out in the future. The trip leaders are all working together. I mean, it had been a 2-year rotation with Europe and Guatemala, and Iceland kind of got in on that same Guatemala timeline. We may change that rotation based on when we're able to travel again. So there's a lot of teamwork going on there.
Any other questions for Matt related to that topic? All right, do you have more on your principal's report you want to share?
I don't really have anything else specific. There's information, as there always is, on the document that's linked, but there was nothing else that I wanted to highlight.
Okay. If nobody has any other questions, we're going to move on to graduation and end of year planning. I'm assuming that's you, Matt.
That is me again. And again, I sent this message out at the end of last week, just with the base outline of a graduation plan, which is going to be on campus in vehicles, where students can come and we'll have speeches recorded, and we have a great collaboration going on, as we always do, with WDEA. WDEA is going to broadcast on the radio the graduation speeches and the reading of the names. We're going to live stream it on YouTube at the same time. Students will be able to get up, walk across the stage, get their diploma. We're going to have a photographer on site, and we're going to do a parade around the communities. That's the basic information. Behind that, there are layers and layers and layers and layers of planning going on. So the press release that went out was just the base, the surface of that. We've got a great team of people working together, working out all the details, working out the finer points. And, you know, I'm going to be continuing to put out frequently asked question documents and just communicating more and more directly as we get closer with the steps in the process. So I would definitely take questions.
Yeah, any questions for Matt about this? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to action items. First item is the nomination and election of a math teacher.
So I think that with the link to the Zoom for this meeting, there was also a document that had information about our math candidate. Did people get that? Okay, so I think, Mark, if that's all right, I can talk about Ellen and then you would do the nomination. Is that how that goes?
Matt, I'm thrilled that you can present the information.
Okay.
In advance, I am recommending and nominating Ellen to the board for consideration, but if you could give her overview, that'd be great, Matt. Thank you, please.
Sure. Yep, you're welcome. So we are thrilled to have Ellen Bailey as a candidate, as an applicant for this math position. I think Ellen's even watching tonight. Hi, Ellen. She is a math teacher currently in Wisconsin. She had been in Maine for 15 or so years, moved to Wisconsin, and then is now moving back to Maine. We're really excited. Her references were just about some of the best I've ever gotten when I called principals. All three of the principals that I talked to said some version of "this is the best teacher" and then fill in the blank. And so she is very highly recommended. She's a math teacher that has a broad range of experience. And one of the impressive things about her is she's very thoughtful. She is very, it's obvious that she practices her skills. She doesn't just rely on charisma. She's a constant learner. And she also was really excited about the idea of working with math students who math isn't necessarily their first love. And that's not always a trait that math teachers have. And so I think she's really going to fit in very well for us in our school. So that is the basic overview. And I certainly would take questions.
Any questions for Matt? Okay, so I'm assuming no discussion. This is excellent that we have such a great candidate. So I would now need a motion to hire Ellen Bailey.
I move to approve. Oh,
Yep, you're moving that, okay.
I would move to approve the hiring of Ellen Bailey for the high school math position.
Second.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second, Heidi.
Thank you, Heidi. Any discussion? All right, I'm going to go through the roll call. Robin Sue,
Approve.
Marie,
Approve.
Lily,
Approve.
Charlie,
Approve.
Todd,
Approve.
Heather,
Approve.
John,
Approve.
Ingrid approves, Jessica Stewart,
Approve.
Heidi.
Approve.
Excellent. We have a unanimous hiring of Ellen. Welcome to the group, Ellen. We're excited for you to be here. All right. So the next item under action items is consideration of revised fiscal year 21 budget. And Nancy sent the budget out to everybody today. Thank you, Nancy, for that. So we didn't have to go digging through old emails. Matt, you on with this?
I am. If you don't mind, I'd like to backtrack just a second. It reminded me when I was talking about Ellen and the fact that she was there. Going back to my principal's report, I wanted to point to say, and I don't know who's watching tonight, but after the last meeting, I got a lot of feedback from teachers who are watching the meeting. So this is maybe a bonus that we're getting more teachers at our meetings doing it this way than meeting in the library. So I appreciate that people are participating, even though it's kind of passive participation in this particular way about it. So anyway, I wanted to say thank you for those of you who are out there watching right now. I don't know who you are, but thank you. And so the budget. So the budget, as you remember, we passed a budget with a fairly large increase in both assessment and a budget-to-budget increase. And part of the reason for that is we had a new position in there for a part-time teacher for Island Pathways. We had some work on our gym floor, some refinishing of our gym floor, and a few other things in there. So we removed those. We talked about that last month at the meeting. And then Nancy and Mark and I went through the budget as it was, and we were able to find some places where we knew we were going to spend less money. If you go through the whole budget, you can see highlighted places that, first of all, we found out what our increase in health insurance was. It was 6%, not 10. So you can see that was, Nancy did an amazing job of finding all the different cost centers where that's there and making those adjustments. We now know the price of fuel is much less than we thought, so we're able to adjust that down. We know that we are likely to drive less, so we were able to modify that down. So we're able to cut quite a lot of money out of the budget. One other piece that we cut out was we had some furniture that we typically have been trying to replace year after year in classrooms to be more mobile, more active, and we had $30,000 in the budget for that. We cut that out for this year. We had some bridge year money in our laptop funding program that we had, but we were able to cut 40,000 out of that. That is going to need to have to go back in next year. And that all being said, we were able to change the overall budget increase down to just over 4%. Keeping in mind that $350,000 of that, so the overall budget increase is $468,000. $350,000 of those dollars are related to the electric bus, which is then covered with $280,000 in grant revenue. So that is, without that, the budget to budget would be very nearly just over 1%. Or I'm sorry, just under 1%. The assessment change was close to 10 before. We've been able to bring that down in this proposed budget to 4.74% by bringing the cost down and also being able to change our anticipated spending numbers much lower in this current year based on the money that we're not spending. So there are I'm sorry, I'm going to switch back over. I was looking at the spreadsheet and I hate not being able to see people's faces when I'm talking. So I switched back here. We were able to more accurately predict what we're going to spend so that we adjusted our anticipated carryover revenue up. So we were able to bring it way down from, if you remember the first time we proposed this budget, it was almost a 12 or a little over 12% assessment increase. In this version, it's down to 4 3/4. There's a couple of things I'd like to have us think about here. One of the reasons that we're able to bring this budget down is because we know we're spending less money because of the current pandemic situation we're in, both cutting back on some things, and it is making some things less expensive. Another reason we're able to cut this budget down is because of the timeline. We knew way more information than we did in the middle of March when we were forced to adopt this budget by our normal protocols. I'm not advocating a change in the Private and Special Act. And I'm also pointing out that if we had this type of a timeline more normally, we would be able to come in with lower budget numbers. So those are two things that I think, and then I would certainly take feedback or questions about the modified budget proposal.
Does anybody have any questions for Matt? Marie?
You piqued my curiosity about the technology piece. Can you talk a little bit about, you said there were some bridge funds for laptops and that you were going to take those out, but then you knew that we were going to have them. And I feel like I have this might be our reality that we are going to be facing for a while. And I noticed at Connors Emerson, we're kind of always dealing with, we're on the edge of having enough laptops for everybody now because they're in constant use. So can you talk a little bit about your thought process there? And obviously I know you wouldn't, kneecap like your students and teachers for what they need, but what's in there to that you feel good about, so that when things break down, we have what we need as we may consider online learning for a while.
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify that. What we have is in our technology line, we have several different lines for hardware. One of them is called, the title of the line is laptop program. We have typically, it's based on a per unit count, and it costs us about $140,000 each year on our lease. Those are for the student laptops. What has happened this coming year, and this was the plan before any of these new things happened, but the plan was, this was the end of the 4-year lease. And the state had decided that they were going to not do a new lease for next year and take an extra year to figure out what was going on. So they are selling the devices to the schools for $50 each. So 50 times 550 is way less than $140,000. Way less than $140,000. In the original version of this budget, we had thought that it would be very unwise to cut that budget all the way down for 1 year, knowing we were going to have to put it all the way back up the next year when there's a new lease. So basically what we did when taking and going for, so this budget that you see in front of you has 100,000. It has 40,000 of that 140,000 cut out. It's still not going to cost us nearly that much to support that laptop program. But it doesn't drop the amount too low so that it's not too hard to get back up to. So this is 2 for 2 for the questions you're asking tonight, Maria. Way long-winded explanation to say, yes, I feel very comfortable we have enough money to support our technology needs next year at a time when technology has never been more vital to what we're trying to do.
Any other questions for Matt that are budget related? Okay, so I would love a motion on this budget. From one of you.
I move approval of the budget as presented by Matt.
Okay, in the amount of $11,770,000. Yeah, okay. $11,777,947. Charlie,
Yeah,
that's your motion.
I second that, Todd.
Mark?
Nancy, can you please verify the figure just to make sure before they vote?
Yes, I would have hollered it.
You just said wrong amount. Okay, so we have a first and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll go through the roll call. Robin Sue.
Approve.
Marie.
Approve.
Lily.
Approve.
Charlie.
Approved.
Todd.
Approved.
Heather.
Approve.
John Bench.
Approved.
Ingrid. Approved. Jessica,
Approve.
and Heidi.
Approve.
Okay, we have approval of our budget. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy and Matt, for finding ways to get this down as low as possible. Okay, we are not gonna, we're postponing the consideration of 1-year modification to the physical education examinations of students until the June meeting. And then that takes us down to authorization to participate in consolidated application for use of Title I and Title IIA funds.
May I?
Yes, please.
I think many of you have heard this explanation probably more than you want to, but if you have a question, I'm happy to answer it. But what this allows us to do is something we don't typically do as an AOS. We have to apply for things separately. This allows us to do it in one as a unit rather.
Okay, so can I get a motion?
So moved, Heidi.
Thank you. A second?
Second, Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica. Any discussion? All right, going through the voting list. Robin Sue,
Approve.
Marie,
Approve.
Lily,
Approve.
Charlie,
Approve.
Todd. Todd,
Sorry, approved.
Heather,
Approve.
John Bench,
Approve.
Ingrid approves, Jessica,
Approve.
and Heidi.
Approve.
Thank you. Then we're going to move on to the authorization for the superintendent to apply for and receive state and federal funds. Can I get them? Do you need any explanation on that?
Not unless you have any questions, Ingrid.
Pretty self-explanatory. So I need a motion on that.
So moved, Heidi.
Thank you. A second.
Second,
John Bench, thank you. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Sure, Charlie.
Mark, is there any anticipation that federal COVID-related funds are included in this action?
Julie, chime in, or Nancy if I misspeak, but we have not heard of anything that would tell us that, Charlie. I'm not aware of anything that's going to impact this at this time. Julie?
Is the question if we apply for COVID-19 funds that they would impact Title I, future Title I allocations, or am I missing?
No, the question is whether or not COVID funds, there are education funds that have been floating around, whether we anticipate being eligible for any, really.
So,
Yeah,
so
but not a lot.
right, and that's the challenge, Charlie. Just so the board knows, this is not related to the CARES Act funding, this piece that you're considering now. But I want to be very cautious just with CARES Act funding, because we have not received the guidelines yet, and based upon the formula, we probably won't be receiving a massive amount of funds.
Yeah, so actually this, I don't mean to dispute, but this actually does apply to the COVID-19 funds, should we apply for them. I've heard a figure, I don't know whether this is accurate or not, about 80% of our Title I funds, which is not very much.
Right. I agree. We agree.
That's what happens when you're minimum receiving district.
Yes.
Okay. So we need to vote on this. Robin Sue,
Approve.
Marie,
Approve.
Lily,
Approve.
Charlie,
Approve.
Todd,
approve.
Heather,
Approve.
John Bench,
Approve.
Ingrid, approve, Jessica,
Approve.
and Heidi.
Approve.
Thank you. And now we need to appoint the truant officer, the attendance officer, and the school physician. Those details were in the body of Selena's email to us. So if I could get a motion for that?
So moved, John.
Thank you, John. A second?
Second, Todd.
Okay, John, can you just read, who fill those positions? Do you have that in front of you?
I don't,
I
sorry.
do.
Okay, so, your motion would be to approve the truant officer is, Chief Jim Willis, the attendance officer is Chief Jim Willis, and the school physician is Dr. Mark Kandich.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and Todd, you seconded that group of people?
I second.
Okay, any discussion?
Would you repeat those names, please?
Yes, Jim Willis is both the truant officer and the attendance officer,
Thank you.
and Mark Kandich is the school physician.
Okay.
Any discussion? Okay, Robin Sue, your vote.
Approved.
Marie,
Approved.
Lily,
Approve.
Charlie,
Approve.
Todd,
Approved.
Heather,
Approved.
John Bench,
Approved.
Ingrid approves, Jessica,
Approve.
and Heidi.
Approved.
Thank you. The next action item is consideration of extension of contract and adjustment of salary for adult education director. Is that Mark? Okay.
Yes, so I'm pleased to recommend Ann Patterson for continuance as adult education director. With would you like me to give the percentage of the recommendation, Ingrid?
Sure.
The percentage is consistent with the administrative recommendation, 3.87%, and that's consistent with also the teacher negotiated agreement.
Okay. Any questions for Mark about this? Okay, can I get a motion to approve this?
So moved, Heidi.
Second?
Second, this is Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica. Any discussion? Okay, we'll go down the roll call. Robin Sue,
Approved.
Marie,
Approved.
Lily,
Approve.
Charlie,
Approve.
Todd,
Approved.
Heather,
Approve.
John,
Approved.
Ingrid approves, Jessica,
Approve.
and Heidi.
Approved.
Thank you. And the last is consideration of extensions of contracts and adjustments of salaries for MDIHS administrators. That Mark again? Yep, Mark, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we've completed a review process and personnel evaluation. Principal Haney and Principal Haney also has completed a process for his administrative team. And I'd like to recommend, if it pleases the board, we can take these as a slate or individually, but I'd like to recommend continuing contract status for Principal Matthew Haney, Dean of Students Ian Braun, Dean of Curriculum Julie Kablinski, and Director of Student Activities and Athletics Alfred Bunky Dow, with the percentage for the increase in salary at 3.87%, consistent with the teachers' negotiated agreement. Thank you.
I move the slate.
Thank you, Heidi. Is there a second?
Second, Jessica.
Thanks, Jessica. Any discussion? Okay, we're gonna go through the roll again. Robin Sue,
Approved.
Marie,
Approved.
Lily,
Approve.
Charlie,
Approve.
Todd,
Approve.
Heather,
Approve.
John,
Approved.
Ingrid approves, Jessica,
Approve.
and Heidi.
Approved.
All right, unanimous approval. Thank you all for everything that you're doing to try to get us through this insane time. You're appreciated by your school board members, your communities, your students, by everybody. Future agenda items, I'm sure there'll be multiples. We'll do the 1 year modification for the physical examinations in June. I think it makes sense for us. The AOS is looking to have their meeting on the second Monday of the month, and I think it probably makes sense to continue in that fashion like we have in the past, with the high school meeting happening after the AOS meeting, unless for some reason, we'll try. I think we'll try to stick with that 5 and 6 o'clock time, unless we find one agenda is if the AOS agenda is too full, we'll push the high school meeting back if that makes sense to everybody. So I guess that would be June 8th. And is there any other business? Mark?
Just quickly, Madam Chair, just because we have a captive audience and hopefully we have people listening, but I'll speak to this later at the next AOS meeting. But I am very conscious of the times we're in. Certainly the times for student activities and events and what that means for families. And also very conscious of the fact that people want to know what's happening with our schools in terms of discussions for potential for return and so on. So I am setting up an advisory group. I'll be working through the board chairs on membership of that. And I just wanted people to know that we really appreciate people's feedback, their questions, their comments, concerns. We don't want to make decisions or recommendations in a vacuum. So I just wanted to put the word out that we're thinking of that. And we really appreciate in advance those folks that will take us up on being a part of that process. Thank you.
Okay, and if there's any public comment after this meeting, it gets submitted to the school, and then we will read it at our next meeting.
Correct.
So I would entertain, thank you all for your time, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Heidi.
Thank you, Heidi.
Second, John.
What, second by John. Okay, folks, good to see you. And, I look forward to the day when we're actually in the library together again.
Yep.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Stay well.